Hello, we are going to talk about A Bird Came Down the Walk by Emily Dickinson. Let's read the poem first. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in house and ate the fellow roe. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass, and then hopped sidewise to the wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all aboard. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. He stirred his velvet head like one in danger. Cautious, I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rode in softer home than oars divide the ocean, too silver for a scene, or butterflies off banks of noon leap flashless as they swim. A Bird Came Down the Walk was first published in 1891 in the second posthumous collection of Dickinson's poem. The poem has five quatrains composed in iambic trimeter with occasional four-syllable lines. The rhyme scheme is a loose ABCD. In this poem too, Dickinson uses what is popularly known as a slant rhyme. For an example, in the first quatrain, the second and the fourth lines end with so and ro. In the second quatrain, the second and fourth lines end as grass and pass. Whereas in the third quatrain, the last words of the second and fourth lines are abroad and head. Again, in the fourth quatrain, the second and the fourth lines end in crumb and home. In the last quatrain, the second and the fourth line end in seen and swim. The meter is broken up at intervals with long dashes and commas, indicating short pauses, which indicate a lack of motion or moments of contemplation. This poem is a classic example of Dickinson's exceptional powers of observation and description. The voice of the poem describes seeing a bird coming down a walk. A walk is a path leading to a house. With that description, the poetess elevates the bird to the status of a guest. This is further accentuated when the poetess chooses to refer to the bird with the pronoun he instead of the much common it, and thereby anthropomorphizing the bird. However, in the third and fourth lines, she sees the bird doing something people usually do not do. He eats a worm roe, and her surprise and even revulsion is indicated by the use of a comma before the term roe. According to Christian teaching, God provides for creatures of nature. Therefore, a drop of dew is conveniently placed for the bird to drink after its meal. That description also emphasizes how uncomplicated the bird's life is in comparison to human life. The bird, once full, hopped sidewise to the wall to let a beetle pass. Unlike human beings, creatures of nature do not usually kill for fun. They, more often than not, respect the rights of their fellow creatures. In the third stanza, the poetess thinks that the bird glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all abroad. The bird is observant of the world around it. It is in tune with it and it lives in the present. The poetess interprets the bird's observant carefulness as fear. This is an example of the human tendency to reflect human feelings on a creature one has no connection with. This the poetess acknowledges by using the qualification I thought at the end of the third line of the stanza. There is a sense of voyeurism in the voice's description of the bird's activities. The voice is observing the bird, and had the bird known that it is being observed, it would not have allowed the voice to catch it unawares at such a vulnerable moment. The poetess is sensitive to the bird's need for secrecy. I quote, "He did not know I saw," end quote. She says in the first stanza. By hiding the word him that should have come at the end of that line, the poetess hides the bird's presence from others. The poetess may even be trying to hide that she has been observing the bird from the bird too. In the fourth stanza, the voice seems to have felt privileged to have seen what she has seen. Consequently, she makes the bird an offering. Human beings base their relationship on mutual give and take. In addition, this particular offering may have been made with the intention of taming this representative of nature. But what the voice offers is a crumb. The placement of the two terms, or juxtaposition of the two terms, offer and crumbs side by side, brings out the paradoxical effect, which is almost pathetic. We were told in the third line of the first stanza, the bird had bitten an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow roe. Firstly, there is such power and independence in this bird that finds its own food and consumes it with such gusto. Such a creature would surely not accept a mere crumb, literal or figurative, as an offering from anyone. Secondly, even after seeing the bird in action, the boy seems not to have drawn the conclusion that this is most probably a carnivore. Moreover, the cautious way the bird moves about should have warned the voice that the bird, even if it were an omnivore, would not have accepted an offering from an unknown entity. It takes a long time to build a relationship that is close enough for a wild animal to accept food from a human hand. We have hunted, poisoned, and tortured animals to such an extent. Animals have learned to be weary of us. This single act of the voice and the bird's reaction to it shows how alienated we have become physically, emotionally, and spiritually from the natural world, and how much we crave for a closer connection with it. In that desire lays Dickinson's link with the Romantic school of poetry. That was Sheba, one of my birds. There is a sense of affronted majesty in the way the bird rejects the human offering and flies away. I quote, "And he unrolls his feathers and rode him softer home," end quote. In comparison to the bird's terrestrial movements and the movements of the cautious voice, there is such grace and harmony in the flight of the bird. In the third and fourth lines of the fourth stanza, the poetess introduces a sustained metaphor which she continues in the fifth stanza. The bird is seen as a sailing ship. When it stretches out its wings to take off, the action is compared to the unfurling of a sail. The guest, visiting done, returns home. Its wings are cutting through the air with such efficiency and harmony and economy of movement. The wings, unlike the oars of a sailing ship that are man-made, therefore imperfect imitations of creations of nature, which stirred up foam and divided the ocean, cuts through the air cleanly. In fact, the flight of the bird is more perfect than butterflies leaping off banks of noon, because the insects make splashes. By using these two comparisons, the poet illustrates the seamlessness and fluidity of the bird's flight through the air. According to Helen Wendler, this poem attests to Dickinson's cool eye, her unsparing faculty, her startling similes and metaphors, her psychological observations of herself and others, her capacity for showing herself mistaken, and her exquisite relish of natural beauty. According to Harold Bloom, the bird displays a complex mix of qualities: ferocity, fastidiousness, courtesy, fear, and grace. He further notes that the description of the bird's flight is that seen by the poet's soul rather than her finite eyes. Dr. Chuck Taylor states that the naturalistic description of a bird is almost symbolic. According to him, the description of the bird's flight suggests the ease with which a person's soul reaches heaven. With that, we come to the end of our discussion today. Let's meet with another poem in another video. Goodbye.